far as what you need to be doing. So I want you to be thinking about doing active or continuous improvement. And this is your resume, your LinkedIn, your job search technique, and then documenting your learning, so that you can you can actually functionally not show that you're improving, but then also show it during an interview, because that's what career people want to see. Make sure you align your goals with the capstone internship once you get into it. You're gaining something, the company should be gaining something. You're documenting it for credit and for a grade. You're also documenting it for yourself. Always think of where this stuff overlaps. And if you think of it that way, then you only have to do something once and you get, double value out of it. I had told you this, that the main goal is to impress your boss. It's really true. Make your boss look good. Things are be good for you. But after your internship, if there isn't a position available, you should have a good lead on something and good recommendations from your current boss. That's what you're always working to, is the next thing. I talked about the course binder. You should be working on this course binder as well. You should be taking notes right now. Have a piece of paper, some things that I'm talking about, things you're going to refer to in your reflections, things like that. You got to start building that, because you want to take what we cover in this class to your capstone internship. And then the stuff you do in your capstone internship and this class to your first job. You should be building on what's going on right now. For the binder, here's sort of the grading rubric that I use, and I'll be using it midway through the semester and at the end. You can see here that I want you to be thinking and actually have maybe a section on planning and tracking progress. What are some of your goals? Well, one of them is to get that capstone internship. Another maybe to grow your network. Another, improve aspects of it. Track it in there, in that section. Your journal and reflective activity for you, luckily, each week we're doing it. And so you can kind of just use that, double dip. Your work notes are your class lecture notes. I need to see something. If you're just kind of bumbling along, you're going to get into your internship and you're going to bumble along. And you're not going to be documenting what you're achieving. You're not going to be documenting what you're learning. And then what is it? You're dead reckoning at that point. Your case studies, we'll have a couple of them at least this semester, so you want to have examples in there, and you also want to take the feedback I give you on those reports and learn from them. And then finally, it should be organized and very clean, easy to find things. So for this week's assignments, I want you to utilize a career services appointment consultation, or contact an HR recruiting professional that you may know, and they're going to review your resume and you're going to share what they have to say. I'm going to combine everybody's recommendations into one thing for maybe next week or the week after. Using only Handshake, I want you to do a job search like you did for last week, but only in Handshake. Some of you did use Handshake, so it'll be easy for you. But Frank's going to demonstrate that in the lecture. I want you to use LinkedIn. I want you to be liking and sharing more, because I am tracking that. I used that in scoring of last week, and I'm posting stuff now. I'm going to post stuff the day of the lecture. I'm going to post stuff when I'm in Des Moines at the Rock meeting, and I expect you to like and comment, share. I'm going to have you, so I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but next week we're going to meet at the ASSP technical meeting in New Berlin. If you can make it. I hope a lot of you can make it. I've got most of the board members already committed to staying after, because their meeting goes, I think, from 12 to 1:30, and then right away we will kick in, and Tony Prospero is our guest speaker, and he was going to be there anyway. And we've got some scenarios we're going to put you all through, and he also is going to share his techniques and how to persuade management. Then you're going to do that too. Cool stuff. And then write your personal reflection. And also make sure you are thinking about your binder now. Last week I went over it. Now is the time to really get it going. So for taking lecture notes, some of you have different methodologies, and I really need you to push yourself. Don't just, write the titles of the slides. My other class, I'm already taking points off for that. I want to know what you're taking away from this. I want you to create a plan and be thinking about how you're going to assemble your binder. It can be physical, or it can be completely in Microsoft Word. It's up to you. But you got to be working on that already. It isn't something you wait until the day before it's due. That's the recommendation that students who graduate are always recommending too. Don't wait. Just work on it a little bit at a time. Same with LinkedIn. The journaling needs to be really challenging to yourself to compare, and I think a lot of you did a good job this week. Some of you, I'm a little concerned, because you're like, oh, yeah, everything's good. Everything's fine. I always worry when students say that. There is some anxiety whenever a class begins, and although you may be excited about what may be going on, there should be a little bit of anxiety, and that anxiety is you really wanting to improve yourself, to be more perfect. If you're like, oh, everything's fine or whatever, I'm afraid that you may not have the motivation. We're going to look at some case studies here, and that's one of your assignments this week too, is to review 3 case studies. I'm going to review 2 to demonstrate it. Make sure when you're reading those reports, one, that there is an executive summary. If there's no executive summary, a lot of points are lost. But make sure that the person who wrote it is providing very clear scope, context, justification, and objectives for it, because you're defining an issue and then you're attempting to find a way to resolve it. So that, let's say someone is getting, they're cutting their hands and it's costing this much, or slowing things down in production, whatever it might be. Well, maybe you're going to recommend gloves, or maybe a new type of cutting tool, whatever it might be. You need to really evaluate those new scenarios or recommendations against the current state. Is it going to slow things down? What is it going to cost to build or initiate and maintain? You got to consider all those things. How, if it's gloves, how are you going to select the right ones? How are you going to test them or pilot them? What do they cost? Do they really work? Things like, these are the things you need to be thinking about. So it's not a question answer. It's a understanding the question and then coming up with a range of potential options along with what they could save, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's increased productivity, whether it's just satisfaction with the workers and morale, whatever it might be. So you need to provide supporting literature and references. So you need to do some research. It can be completely online, that's fine, but you need to be able to provide something other than your opinion. There may be some documentation in-house at the company you're working at that may provide some seed information, but you need to really put it in the context of what is known and published, hopefully peer-reviewed, which means it's been refereed. Make sure you do some form of analysis or critical review, that it's not like I had a student once, his case study was people need to wear hard hats. What's the issue? They don't have hard hats on their head, and they should. You gave the answer in the question. If it's workers are experiencing contusions on their head due to low-hanging ceilings or something like that, or a bar that's out there, well, we'll consider hard hats as an option. Maybe bump caps are better. Maybe a pillow strapped to their forehead. I don't know. But you have to consider more than just, I already have the answer. Some students do that. It's like an issue's already been resolved and they're going to write a case study around it. Well, you haven't demonstrated that you have the capability to objectively define a problem and then apply a technique to collect data and observations in order to render recommendations that are value justified. I hope that kind of provides you some insight there. We'll talk about cost benefit a little bit later, but basically in the reports, they have to justify this. What you'll find is this is the most limiting portion of the reports, is that they overestimate what the potential losses are or don't provide real justified losses. Oh, it's $1 million. Well, then you can justify basically anything. It needs to be realistic. But they usually are pretty good with the determination of the investment, though it tends to be very narrowly focused to just equipment and installation. And there should be more than that, because there usually is training if you're changing something. So we're going to, here's my tips, I guess. When you're writing a case study, and as you're reading it too, is it written to you so that you're learning something? You're learning that, oh, this is an issue I may come in contact with, be exposed to, no, that's still a bad word, may have to deal with in the future. I see where you justified it with certain data, whether it's in-house or like a government agency or something, or respected textbook, some sort of refereed media, that you laid up your objectives on how you're going to go about it. You provided your methods or your technique for the evaluation, the data you're going to collect, and then you reported the data you collected and how it rendered the recommendations. You want to be learning from it. If you're reading it and you're really confused and you don't understand it, then they didn't do a good job. They didn't provide enough detail. They should not be writing in first person. It's like writing Dear Diary. Today I evaluated the use of hard hats. You did? Well, no, keep it objective as possible, and we'll work on that. Be concise. Don't be wishy-washy. I hate it when students use the term "I looked at." I looked at the data. Of course you did. You had to see it with your eyes. What you did is you analyzed the data based on certain principles or elements or variables, and you used certain techniques to compare and contrast. You guys, I hope you understand the difference. Each case study needs to start out with an executive summary. Should be under 2 pages. Some students go 2.5. Whatever. The executive summary is written for upper management. They should only have to read that summarized section and understand basically what you found and what you're recommending and why. Cement truck just drove by. The rest of the report is more written for academics, your advisors and other students. So that should be longer. So I've had some students write a half-page executive summary and a 5-page technical report. Hells to the no. That's not even close to what you should have. Try to keep the executive summary under 2 pages. There should be tables, figures, numbers in it, along clearly indicating what you're recommending. The technical report, 15, 20, 25 pages, depending on what you need. Provide pictures, things like that. Again, you're trying to educate, and you're not just trying to say, this is what I did. So I'm going to quickly go over these 2 similar case studies. It's kind of targeting the same area. You, for this next week, are going to do an evaluation using the updated grading rubric. I've got it right here. It's out of a total score of 100. You can see the areas here. It's going to be difficult for you to assess the planning expectations and pre-approval. That's something that students, that's new. So these may not really have that, but there should be some sort of evidence clearly stated of what's expected. What does management expect out of this? That should be addressed. That's an important aspect of it. Or are you just doing it for a class, right? Executive summary is worth 20 points. If it's not there, that's 0. The technical report is worth 40 points. And it needs to have a lot of elements. And then we just overall evaluate how it was presented and whether it provided some references. I guess the grammar and then how it was presented. That's another 20 points. So think broadly, students tend to be more critical than faculty, but it's a good start for you. So I'm going to look at these 2. You're going to look at 3 fall protection. For next week, if you can, and I hope you can, you need to do this immediately if you can, we're going to be meeting at the New Berlin Ale House. You can see over here, this is where you can go. This is what the picture is. You go in here and put 1. If you're a student member, that's all you need. It's free. I believe lunch is served, so that's part of it. The technical meeting or the speaker is going to speak from 12:30 to 1:30. You're welcome to attend. You don't have to go to that if you don't want to. I do recommend it though, if you can make it. Have lunch, hang out with us, and then when it's over at 1:30, it's usually 1:45 actually. Then we'll get going with ours. We'll probably have some discussions. I'll probably have the WebEx, start around 1:30 or something if you have to do it that way. And hopefully we can spend hour and a half together on there, and maybe 2 hours depending. Tony's going to do a presentation, and then we're going to have the people who are participating they're going to be given scenarios, and you're going to be using your laptops or phones, and you're going to attempt to convince, you're going to get up in front of us and you're going to try to convince us why we should take your recommendation. Yeah. So Tony and I are working on those scenarios right now. That's going to be pretty cool. And those of you there also get to meet some ASSP officers. Hopefully you can network with them. So let's go to the presentation here. So here's our week 2. Here's the website. You put in your quantity there, hit register. I don't know what the deadline is for the RSVP, which is why I'm saying do it right away. And I'll put that in an email to all of you. Here is the capstone internship case study. I had talked about this last week. Read this, break it down. This is what is provided to our capstone interns to guide them on what to write for their report. This will help you. So read this first. And then we've got the rubric. So again, in the actual report itself, do we have any indication that it was planned and how it would connect to the company's safety program? Or is it just this standalone project? Probably won't get much of that, so we may just be scoring this out of 80. That's all right. That's fine. So here's the first case study. It was published back in 2020. It's a machine guarding case. So right after this is a nice looking cover page. That's also important that it's a cover page. It is submitted in PDF, so good on them. They used a header to indicate what it is. Cool. I may have added that though. I can't remember. So for the executive summary, right away, we see the font change from what looks to be a sans serif, possibly Arial, to Times Roman. As a professor, what that sometimes means is there was a copy and a paste. If you're going to copy and paste, you can't just cite the author. You have to cite the page and document that you got it from. So right there, I'm a little concerned, but I'm going to overlook that for right now and just take a point off of one of the 10-point things. So right away, they're indicating that non-fatal amputations happen a lot. Okay, so amputations, again, happen a lot. This company received an OSHA citation for machine guarding because it's a national emphasis program, amputations are. So that's the justification and context. It'd be nice to know what type of machine they have, but let's read on. An analysis of all machines was conducted. I don't like that. That's too general. Be more specific. To make sure they're OSHA compliant, what does that mean? I'd like to be more specific. Each machine was given overall risk. Okay, so what system did you use? What technique? It should have been laid out here. This is a little bit too vague, but then they narrow it to, the scope narrows to the AcuPress machine. I don't know what that is. Would really appreciate a picture and other information. And what does it mean to have a risk rating of 160? You see, again, this is for upper management, and they may skip over this, but I still think it's good to be very detailed here. Because, you got a lot of wording up here. Provide a picture. And then this table's huge. Doesn't have to be this big. They talk about no repeat citation, work comp benefit. I'm wondering where that came from. A guard is $14,000. So the savings is way too high. I think what you'd want to do is modify this. Make it more realistic. They went really high with the numbers. I'd like to know what this is broken down into. Okay, they talked about where this came from, I think. It's only missed wages, and that isn't very accurate either. Table 1. Is it labeled Table 1? Yeah. I don't know. I think that could be better. I think more pictures, more explanation would be a lot better. And if you have 937% return on your investment, re-look at your numbers. That's just yikes. Table contents is nice. You don't have to break out scope, justification, and context in individual subsections. It could just be the introduction is this section. And the scope is more or less the equipment guarding for that one piece of equipment. The context is machine guarding or prevention of amputations through machine guarding. Justification was already provided. There should have been more information here about the type of machines, a breakdown of OSHA's machine safeguarding standard, and other resources. And then the objective should have been a little bit more specific and narrow too. Method, this should not be bulleted. This should be explained. This should explain the risk assessment technique and then how they determined whether, an outside company should come in and do it. Should they do presence sensing or physical guards and things like that? Again, we're not getting much out of this. And, okay, well, this is okay if they explain the numbering a little bit better. This is just a decision tree. In the results, we should see the decision tree. We should see the actual data, the numbers themselves, for the whole range and why they narrowed it to that one particular machine and how that machine compares to others. And we really didn't get that at all. Recommendations, they did identify a group that would come out. I would like more information about them maybe. This is nice. Laser guarded system. And then it jumps to this. So not a lot of connectivity here. It seemed like they rushed it. I could see this probably being assembled or written in just a couple hours versus, days of assembly and review. But this is pre-changes. So how would I score this? Let me explain. So the planning expectations pre-approval, we're going to ignore that for now because there really wasn't anything dedicated to it. I don't live on a busy road. I don't know what is going on right now. The executive summary, it was minimal. I think I would probably give it a 16. It was okay. Definitely could be better. There's justification to give it a 14. I'd give it a 14 or 16. Maybe we'll give it a 15. The technical report, I think it's missing some key elements. I couldn't realistically give it a 32. I think I'd give it a 28. It needs work. I would be embarrassed to submit that to management. So far we're at a 14, 15, and 28. Language, I didn't see a lot of use of I, but we saw some font changes. I already said I'd take off a point for that. I don't like a bulleted list for method, so I think I give it an 8. It's very, very minimal. I think that's generous. And then for the presentation, I think I would have to give it, I think I'd give it like an 8 or a 9. In case it had a cover page, had a table of contents. Overall, it was clean. It did have references, though they could have been better. So an 8 or a 9. So let's say 8, I'll give it a 9. So that's 3 off. Here is 12 off. That's 15 off. Here's a 14. That's 6 off. So about 21 off. So they would get a 59 out of 80. That's below a C. So that actually would not make the 70% threshold. We'll see what you all think. This one, we don't have a professional cover page. This is not the second one. I know we're getting a little bit long here. We don't have a professional cover page, so already I'd take points off of presentation. I don't see an indication of this being an executive summary, because that should say it right at the top. They have the scope. There was a site level business level audit. 14 findings for improper machine guarding. The goal of the project is to complete a site suite. Okay, so that reads more like context a little bit. The narrowing should be more specific. Justification, similar to what the other one was. I don't see any dollar amounts, but and it goes to the objective. Ensure compliance. A bulleted list for methods. 72 machines were audited. Well, I'd like to see a table then indicating this all 72 machines and how they scored and why the 5 or how the 5 didn't meet the minimum guarding requirements. And the minimum guarding requirements should have been clearly laid out in the methods, a technique. This is just not. Let's see. What do we have next? Machine guarding visual aid. So this is nice. This is nice to have. It probably should have been in appendices maybe, or maybe provide an example of one. This is a visual, so I can see a lot better what's going on. Trying to see what's going on here. Is this the same thing? Okay, table 1, what is this? Machine guarding visual aid. Okay, that's a visual aid, and then we've got table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4, is there table 5, and then it ends? Okay, that's what they had said. And then recommendations. Well, the recommendations were kind of above, but they need to be cost justified. I don't know what the hell's going on here. It's nice that they did this stuff. Potential machine. Okay, I'd like to know where that came from. So that's okay. They did do an ROI. How about the references? A little better than the last one. And then they got more pictures. Oh, I like that. So let's go back here. So executive summary, there wasn't any. 0. They already lost a quarter of their points right there. Down to 75%. The technical report. It was really all over the place. Let's see what this one says. At very minimum, the case report needs to have proper sections. Not really. Needs to have references. It does. If intro is too brief, methods unclear, or below the list, lack of data or recommendations, then the score should be under 20 points. Wow. Because of the pictures, I'm going to leave it at a 24. So 24 points right now. The language. I didn't really like what they did, so I'm going to have to give that a 7. So now we're at 31. Overall presentation. Yeah, minimal level. I have to get a 7. 7,724. That's 38. 38 out of 80. They got an F. Of course, with an executive summary, that would be halfway decent. That would bring it up into a D range. But can you see? I know that the students didn't mean to submit incomplete case study reports. I know this stuff isn't easy, which is why when you have a reference point, you have an example of one, it becomes a little bit easier. So maybe let's cleanse our palate. And if we go back to the Canvas page here and we go to this excellent case study report, I don't even know if it's going to come up whenever I have WebEx on and stuff like that. I'm sorry, when I've got Canvas on, this is what I'm recording with. Sometimes it's not that good. But take a look at this and look at how they presented it and the elements there. Is it going to let us see? You know, I'd like to show you. Make sure everything else is covered. Make sure you guys sign up for SSO. You know, send an email to Chris Gomez and myself. I believe I have a copy of that. Okay, so this isn't coming up because I'm doing too many things at once on my computer. And now, who knows what is going on with it. All right, so make sure you sign up for this. You can find on our Canvas page how to email with your member ID in order to get on SSO. So please do that. And then use the new grading rubric to do those 3 different things and break them down. So it would be great if you used a table or Excel. So case study 1, what was it about? How would you score each area? And then provide some comments or justification for those numbers. That's really what we have going on this week. Hopefully you'll see a lot of you during the live, either in the classroom or the live broadcast this week. Otherwise, next week, I hope to see a lot of you at the New Berlin Ale House for lunch presentation and then in the class. Thanks a lot.